Welcome to the Adoption Lounge. I'm Amanda.
And I am Katie. Thank you so much for joining us. So
we got our nails done today. Show them your nails, Katie.
I was immediately going to talk about St. Patrick's Day. I don't know if you can see it from there, but they're green and they have gold chrome over them because
you could see them from outer space.
It is a special time.
Her favorite time
of year.
You should have done, instead of welcome, I should have done
the morning to you.
It's perfect. At the office.
We have too many inside jokes to do random intros. We don't practice this at all, in case you're not.
She scared me, dressed like a leprechaun, basically, and said, top of the morning. Yeah, it was the best St. Patrick's Day of my life.
Leprechauns are tricky.
They are.
Yeah. You got tricked by a leprechaun.
I did.
It happens.
I did.
But yeah, so we're really excited. We have a really big parade in my town, and Amanda will be coming and joining us. They do a lot of really cool stuff. Corned beef, obviously.
Of course. Reuben egg rolls, which are my favorite.
I'm really excited for Amanda to get to eat them again.
I appreciate that.
So we're very excited. But today we're going to actually talk about the different costs associated with adoption, so different options that are out there to help supplement those costs and kind of give you some ideas or things to look into.
Yeah. So let's start by going over what the typical expenses are. Obviously, this is going to be different based on what company you go with and what costs they have involved, but there's going to be a program fee.
Yes. So in general, I would say it's pretty common to spend an average of about $40,000 doing adoption. I think that breaks down into many different areas. We're pretty straightforward with our costs. Like, there aren't really any hidden costs, but we have the home study fee, the agency fee, attorney costs, expectant mother support, and of course travel, because we are a national company. So once it's time for the birth, you'll be most likely traveling to her state.
Yes.
So I would say that's the majority of the cost. There's no hidden fees, but some agencies will have placement fees or matching fees. It just kind of depends. But overall, I would say
additional costs for twins or sibling groups.
Yeah, there are some places that charge extra for twins. We do not, but I have heard that before.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
It is wild.
So in general, I would say around 40,000 is a pretty fair average. I've obviously heard a lot more than that.
Yeah, 75 to 85 has been kind of the norm.
Yeah, I've heard that floating around.
Yeah.
So, just something to be aware of. And there's lots of different things that we can talk about today to kind of help supplement some of those costs. Like, we'll talk about different grant programs, employer reimbursement. A lot of people don't realize that you might have that option through your employer. And of course, federal and state tax credits that might be out there,
which can really be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So grant programs.
Katie loves talking about grants.
I do. And at the end, we'll talk about loans and fundraising ideas too.
Yeah.
But for grant programs, a lot of grants, they're not going to consider your application until you have a completed home study. So it doesn't always help a family who's just getting started, but it can be really helpful to help supplement, later costs down the line. And there's just so many out there. I always say they're like college scholarships. You just have to
do the work,
Google it, do the work. We can write grant letters for you, and they all have different categories. So don't be turned off because you're worried that you might not qualify, because there are different kinds of grants that are available.
And they just require different things depending on what grant you're applying for. You do have to be home study ready.
Yeah.
Because with all of them, you'll have to upload your home study.
Yeah, I understand that. I think they just want to make sure that anyone they're awarding a grant to has already been approved for adoption in general.
And it's they're doing adoption. I get it.
Yeah.
So they're income-based?
Yeah, I would say faith-based are the ones that I think are the most common that you hear about, but there are also income-based grants, like you said. And I have a spreadsheet with a ton of them on them. I think you have a spreadsheet as well. But some of the ones that I've had families have success with in the past has been Help Us Adopt, which I don't believe is faith-based. I think they're income-based. Show Hope is a faith-based one that I've had families have success with. I've heard as high as $9,000 was awarded as a grant. So worth your time, I would say.
Yeah, and apply for all of them.
Yeah.
We have it where it's, like she said, we have something that we send our families that kind of list them all, and they even have links to them, which is really nice. Makes it easy for families to start applying. And I've heard it's easy. It's a lot of work, but it's easy once you get into it.
Yeah.
And you start applying.
Well, and you made it through the home study. You can do this.
You can do anything once you've made
Like, it's less paperwork than the home study.
Yes.
So you got this. And we will help you. But it's definitely worth your time, I think. I think people don't bother sometimes because they think there's no chance that they'll get awarded one, but it's worth it. Do you have any specific grant programs that you've had families have success with?
Those are the ones I typically see.
Yeah. There's a lot on the list.
I had somebody that just got approved for an $11,000 grant.
Really?
I think that might have been the highest I've seen.
Yeah.
And I've seen people get multiple. So even if you get approved for one, you can still apply for others because you can get multiple.
Yeah, kind of stack them. So other than grant programs, there's also going to be employer reimbursement.
This is becoming more and more common.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. And some of them are quite a bit. I've seen as high as like 30 to 40,000.
Yeah, I've heard from I think airlines and credit card companies.
They have great.
Yeah, like I know Capital One and Delta, United.
Just talked to a family that is a pilot for American Airlines and they do 30.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. So if somebody wanted to find out if they have employer reimbursement, how would they go about that?
Well, reaching out to your HR department is going to be the where you want to start.
Right. Like not through insurance. So even if you have insurance through your employer, but you already know it doesn't cover it, that's not who you want to be talking to. So talk to HR.
They'll let you know what you need. A lot of times what you need is just a receipt of payment. That's typically, I've had to write a letter a few times, but usually just that what we send in their welcome email is usually all they need.
Yeah. Sometimes it gets bounced back, and then I have the same letter I actually use for grant programs, which lays it out in a bit more detail. But the thing with reimbursement programs is a lot of the reimbursement programs don't pay out immediately. So if you're talking to HR, you should make sure that you ask them, when this reimbursement happens, is it going to be after I've adopted or after I've officially joined a program? Because some of them are helpful later than others. So that's a good thing to know. And then, of course, the amount, the requirements. I know a lot of employers also use Carrot.
Yes. And you have to be an approved agency on their list in order to receive that benefit.
Exactly.
And that's also becoming more and more common.
Which is a good thing. I think they're just trying to protect their employees.
Or that they're using accredited businesses. Too.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's worth checking into. What else? Tax credits?
Tax credits. Federal tax credit went up last year.
It did. I don't have the exact number. 18 something, right?
It's $16,840, I believe, or $810.
That's what it was. But I heard it went up to 18 something. So I think now it went up by like $2,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know that the income base for that is $295,000 a year.
Yeah. And I don't know if that
might have went up too, because I know last year when it went up from 14 to 16, it went up. So that would be nice and helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And the tax credit's kind of a weird one. It's not just a direct reimbursement like you would get possibly with like the new buyer home credit from it's probably like 15 years ago.
That was a really long time ago. Bringing it back.
I feel like when you're in your 40s, everything is anywhere from 6 months ago to like 15 years ago, and it's all just a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Like, I just have no concept.
Well, especially with the pandemic, too. You add that in there.
And we're going to use that forever. It's like the ongoing, like, and COVID. Therefore, I can no longer tell time.
Ever.
It's not my fault. It's COVID's fault. Yes. So, but it doesn't work that way. This is my understanding, but I am absolutely not a CPA. This is just a public service announcement. I am not a CPA. Please consult a CPA. But my understanding of the adoption tax credit is that it's directly related to tax liability when you go to file your taxes. So if you owe the government, then you can use the adoption tax credit to kind of cover that and spread it out for up to 5 years, I believe.
Well, it's not a deduction, so it's not just lowering what you owe in. So, like, if you typically get nothing back at the end of the year, you would get the full amount back. If you typically pay in, then it'll just be deducted off of what you get back. Well, that's my understanding.
So I think if you pay nothing back, it doesn't actually benefit you, so you have to actually be really careful. Like, I've heard of families changing their withholdings so that they get more back in their paycheck to kind of create a situation where they would owe the government at the end of the year. And I think that's why they let you spread it out for up to 5 years, is because
that's awesome.
There might not be a way to figure out how to owe the government $18,000 right off the bat. But, if you have 5 years to spread it out and you're taking a lot more home in your paycheck, there are ways to make it, maximize the benefits of that.
Definitely talk to a CPA. They'll let you know what you need.
Please do.
What you need, how it works.
Yeah. And then some states actually offer credits as well. I know
There's a few. Ohio's like $10,000, which
that's
is
so awesome. And I don't think that is related to tax liability the same way that the federal one is. I could be wrong about that. I think Washington also offers one, and I've heard multiple. So definitely worth checking. And that is completely unrelated to the federal tax credit. So it would be on top of any other credits already.
And you have to wait for a finalized adoption with the state
Yes.
credit.
Yeah, so with the federal as well. So, this isn't something you'll be able to claim right after joining a program.
Right.
So this is just something that you kind of have to plan ahead for, which is why it's good to sit down with someone and make sure you're maximizing the benefit of that.
Yeah.
Now, for people that want to take
Katie's favorite.
I
can do fundraising.
Yeah.
She has a favorite one, which is really cool.
I do. I do have a favorite one. You know what my favorite one is.
I do, but I love to hear you talk about it. So tell them.
Well, so I like the puzzle fundraiser. You guys can't see my podcast producer rolling his eyes at me. But I do really like I like the puzzle fundraiser. I know I talk about it, but it's really cool because it gets everyone in the community involved. If you're willing to put yourself out there, pick out a puzzle that's maybe meaningful to you, or if you're doing a nursery theme or something, and then sell the puzzle pieces. And then similar to any raffle, you can have some kind of swag as a prize. But by the end, you also have written on the back of every single puzzle piece the names of all the people that were involved in helping make this adoption happen. So a finalized or put together puzzle,
I love it.
It's just like a representation of all these people.
Well, it's something special because
Takes a village.
Well, and you can also pass that down to your child and they can keep that versus there are other fundraisers like t-shirts. I've seen people do that.
Yeah.
Bake sales.
Local businesses. You can get local
Yes.
businesses involved. I've heard of families maybe getting involved with I don't want to name drop. We are not affiliated with any of these people. But I've heard Chipotle, you can maybe have someone where 5% of their sales that day for anyone that mentions your adoption.
Well, they do that with schools.
Yeah, exactly.
They have the night out or whatever. So yeah, that's actually a really cool idea.
The PTO does that.
That's actually a really cool idea. I didn't even think about that.
Thanks. I didn't come up with it. Somebody else did,
but you mentioned
it's on our fundraiser list. Yeah. And I think that's a cool one. And with swag, you can always make t-shirts. I am such a sucker for fundraisers. So send me your link.
I've seen people just do GoFundMes too, which is another kind of more basic way now with social media.
Well, and you can channel anything through GoFundMe. And I always recommend that. But there are other websites that are devoted to adoption fundraising, like Adopt Together is one.
Mm-hmm.
I do think they're a little bit more faith-based. I think the one downside is they meet about 4 times a year because they are a nonprofit. So it can be a little bit more difficult to access the money that you've raised. But, they are a great organization worth looking into. So that's a good one. If fundraising, it makes you feel uncomfortable, though, we do have a lot of families who actually turn to financing their adoption. There's a lot of different ways to do that. It really just depends on what resources are available to you.
Yeah, 401k, that's a great option because obviously, even though you're taking a loan against your 401k, you're paying interest back to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
that's an option.
I did that to buy my house.
You can also just take out a lump sum, which typically would have penalties. But if you're doing it for adoption, there was a law that was passed a few years ago.
In 2020, I believe they passed a law where you can withdraw up to $5,000 and have the fees waived if it's adoption related. And if you and your partner both have a 401k separately, I believe you can do that.
Yes.
For both of them. But you can also just borrow in general. It kind of depends on what your 401k allows for. Some don't allow early withdrawal.
Well, some people don't want a loan payment. So if you take a lump sum, you don't have to pay it back.
Yeah.
If you take a loan, you have interest, but you pay it back to yourself. HELOC loans also.
Yep. Mm-hmm. HELOC loans, second mortgages.
A lot of people have been doing HELOC because people have so much equity in their homes right now because prices of homes went up so much over the last few years. So that's an option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are private loan companies out there. Lightstream is one of them. I know they do a lot of private loans that are geared towards adoption.
Easy to work for. Something to keep in mind when you're doing a loan, because there are so many grants and tax credits, so you can typically pay off a loan quicker. You want to make sure that there's not a prepayment penalty.
Yes, absolutely. So other than that, I would say it's always a good idea to consider going and sitting down with your local bank too. If you've been baking somewhere for a long time, you can actually sit down with a financial advisor and just talk to them about what your goals are and see if it's something they would be willing to help with. But I think sometimes when you sit down with someone, you can get more traction than something online because there's just a human aspect to it. For
Totally.
sure. But those are kinds of the different ways that people are affording adoption. I know that costs are very expensive. It's
a sticker shock too. I think people go into
Yeah.
adoption not really knowing what costs are involved, and it can be a little intimidating, but there are so many different programs to make it a little bit more affordable and attainable for families.
Absolutely. And it's just difficult because there's just a lot of services involved and really no support from health insurance or other programs. So this is kind of the way currently that the US tries to make it a bit more affordable through different grant programs and credits, tax credits and stuff like that. So that's the tall and short of it.
Never heard you say that ever. I'm into it.
Okay. I'll keep it.
Well, and hopefully this is helpful. I know so many people, one of the very first questions they have when thinking about possibly embarking on adoption is cost.
Yeah.
You just want to know if it's even attainable, if it's even something they should even spend time looking into. So hopefully this kind of lays it out. Obviously it's different, like we said in the beginning, based on what company you go with.
Sure.
But
yeah. So if you have any questions, of course, reach out to us. We're happy to share the grant spreadsheet, give aid and advice where we can. Definitely recommend professionals when it comes to financing, but always happy to give out ideas and fundraising ideas as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for joining us again. And then hopefully we'll have some more information or some more fun guests for you next time.